Welcome back to Off the Grid. For this little guy, acorns are survival food, and it's all provided free of charge from hundreds of species of oak trees. If you collect 100 grams of acorn meat, you end up with 500 calories, 8 grams of protein, 31 grams of fat, and 33 grams of carbs. It really is nature's bounty. And with a little elbow grease, two-legged creatures like us can add it to our diets too, making everything from pancakes to acorn flour bread. Karen's going to tell us how.
First, you've got to gather acorns. Most oak trees don't begin to produce acorns until around age 20. And a big old oak tree can produce something like 10,000 acorns a year. Plenty for you and the squirrels. But be sure to collect your acorns before the first rain. When I've got a basket full, I'll drag it inside and begin step 2, preparation. The first thing is to get rid of the bad seeds. If the shell is cracked, or rattles when you shake it, or it has a little wormhole, get rid of it. Bad seed. The next step is to dry out your acorns. I dry them by putting the basket on top of our propane fridge. But you can put them in the sun or next to the fireplace. Okay, once they're dried, it's time to crack them. That's Grid's job. We've tried nutcrackers and wood mallets, but settled on squishing them between 2 cutting boards. But you can process quite a few at a time. As you crack the acorns, break off the shell and remove any of the skin, that paper-like membrane between the shell and the nut. Once shelled, it's time to grind them up. That mortar and pestle works, but I prefer a small blender. First time through, the blender gives me chunks smaller than a grapeseed. I take those chunks and measure out a little over 100 grams. That's what we're going to be using in the recipe. And dump them into a fine mesh bag. I use a vegetable bag, which I find works a little better than cheesecloth, but you can use either. Now this next step is very important. You need to leach out all of the tannins. Now you can do that by putting your little bag in a bucket and changing the water regularly. Or if you've got a stream nearby, placing the bag in a side current. Plan on a day or 2 of leaching. Before you go to the next step, do a taste test to be sure you've got the tannins out. And you'll know if the acorns aren't quite ready yet. If they aren't, just keep rinsing until they taste okay. When you're finished, it's time to dry those granules. I put them on a baking tray set on a rack on our fireplace. Once dried, the acorns need to be ground again into a fine flour using the blender. Next, if you've got one, run your dried flour through a flour sifter. Now you're ready to cook. In the written section of this episode, I've listed a couple of recipes you can try. For pancakes, I use equal parts of acorn flour, cornmeal, and either white or whole wheat flour. You can experiment and see what tastes best. Let's see how they taste. Well, Grid,
And you know what? It's pretty good. It's got a nice little nutty flavor.